evening and welcome to the mobile testing training of Blue Sky Citadel. My name is Top Day, and I work as a test consultant with one of the testing companies in the UK. My experience spans mobile testing, functional testing, and web, rest assured, and all that. So basically, this mobile training session is Android based only. And the reason why I'm saying that is because a lot of people have said, "Oh, are we not going to test iOS application and all that?" At the moment, we are only offering Android mobile testing training. Subsequently, we'll be looking at how to divest or go into iOS and iOS testing and all that, because the main reason is that they both have different setups. But at the moment, we're only able to do the Android one. All right, so basically today we'll be looking at what is mobile testing, the types of mobile testing platforms, types of mobile application, types of mobile devices, challenges of carrying out mobile testing, what are the best practices, um, categories of mobile testing, and the mobile testing tools. Mobile application testing is a process whereby software application that is developed for handheld devices. And what we mean by handheld devices, those that include your phone, your um, your iPad, your tablet and all that. They are tested for functionality, usability, and consistency. Now, you can do both manual and automation testing for mobile apps, mobile applications, and all that. So some of these mobile applications they come as pre-installed on your mobile devices, while some of them are, as you likely know, you have to go to the App Store, either the Play Store or the Google Store to download them. So basically, you and mobile application there are at the moment because of COVID-19 and all that, a lot of emphasis are being made, to develop mobile applications that help people to do things, faster. For these days you don't have to go to the banking hall to carry out transactions anymore. If you want to pay somebody, you do that from the tip of your phone, or buying rather than going to the store, you make purchases online, either from your mobile device or your tablet or any form of mobile application. So basically, mobile testing is something that is growing, and there's a lot of focus on it at the moment. Yeah. Now, what we are going to be looking at mobile platforms. As you can see from my screen, we have. Sorry, let me just make it bigger for everyone to see. Now, there are different types of operating systems and developed by different manufacturers, and we can see that they have different forms of popularity. Now, from the charts that you can see on the screen, you see that Android and iOS they have very high popularity. BlackBerry, to be honest, I don't even know if BlackBerry exists anymore. BlackBerry was at a point very, very popular. Windows Phone and Windows, we all know about Windows Phone as well. I think they operate on the back of Android, and then we have the Symbian operating system. They are they are relatively very, very uncommon, and I guess BlackBerry has also fallen into this category. Now, as I said earlier, that device types we have smartphones, we have tablets, we have ebooks and mobile phones and all that. Now, so the next thing we are going to be looking at is mobile application. See, the reason why I'm taking my time to go through these slides is because we need to build a bit of background into what we are trying to do. There's no point going into maybe the manual aspect of mobile application testing without having an understanding of, mobile applications and the various types and differences between one to the other. Now, the first type of mobile application is the mobile web. Every one of us have a at least most of us have mobile phones. And when you go to your mobile phone, you are able to search, for example, BBC, Gmail, or Yahoo on your mobile application. These are mobile web. These are mobile web because you can have a web version of BBC application on your device, or you can have the Gmail web version on your mobile phone or your tablet or e-reader. Now, the benefits of this is that there are very cheap options for delivering a mobile user experience for different types of services they provide. And the reason why they are cheap is because they provide a unique interface for different mobile devices, for different devices to be able to display them and make them available to the user. The other benefit is also they are easy to access. All you need to do is just bring up the mobile web on your phone, type in yahoo.com, and then you have the Yahoo experience. They are also easy to develop, and they are adapted to different screens. Uh, for companies that have mobile web, all they need to do is they need to just create one version of the application. The same thing that will be displayed on a laptop or a PC is also what is going to be displayed on the mobile device as well. There's no need for installation. That you don't have to go to Google and all that. So I think we all know this. Now, the downside is that they are not available offline. Once you don't have reception or a Wi-Fi or network, you are not able to access these applications, mobile web, and you don't have a call button on the home screen for you to be able to access them directly. So as the second type of mobile application we're looking at is the native app. Is the native app. So now the native app is developed specifically for one platform and can be installed through an application store. So as we all know, the most popular ones are the Google Play apps and the Apple Store apps. And example of a native app is Facebook, WhatsApp, Spotify, Netflix, and all that. So the benefits of these are the applications live on your device, and you're able to access the resources from this application through the icons on your home screen. Now, these applications, as we all know, they take full advantage of your device features. So you need to give access to your camera. You need to give them access to your GPS, your contact list, and all that. A lot of these applications work on the back of these connections to your device features. Yeah. Now, native apps can use device notification systems, and you can work with them offline. They have push notifications alerting users of new pieces of content or when attention is required. Like for instance, when you have an email, the notification alert pops up on your phone, and you're able to check your email and all that. Now, another benefit is that they make them. So these application maintain UI. They maintain the UI design of each operating system, so they are configured to work with the UI design of your operating system, thus offering you a better user experience. There are different headers for different operating systems, so the way the application would display on on an iOS device will be different from the way it is being displayed on an Android device and all that. So these are the things that we need to understand while we are doing mobile application testing. Because, for instance, if you've been given a requirement, to test an application, you might want to break down your test cases into iOS, because expectations for iOS will be different from expectations for Android and across different operating systems. So you might want to break down your test cases, in terms of display and in terms of display for different operating systems. So that's a very good test case, you know, uh, test case. Well, how will I say, how to derive a test case and all that. Now, the downside of the native app is that they don't come cheap. They are very expensive. Um, the apps that are developed for one platform will not run on the other. So for you as a product owner, when you are considering development, when you are considering about um, making an app or for one purpose or the other, you need to look at which platforms are your applications going to run on, and then you need to make them available on these platforms. And by doing so, you need to invest in your application for your application to be able to run on these devices and all that. So you need to another thing is that we need to build a different app together for iOS, because of and you also and for Android as well. And you also need to, apart from building these apps, you need to also maintain the cost of maintaining them. The cost of running them is also, part of the things that you need to look at as well. Now, another thing is that despite the fact that you have a native app, you might also need, for instance, Facebook. You have the Facebook icon on your mobile device, but at the same time, you can also access Facebook as a web app. So these are considerations that you also need to give, because you need to, these are the considerations that you need to give, and which at the end of the day builds up on the cost for your on the cost of development, maintenance, and all that. And then another thing is that you need to, through bug fixes, through specific update, maybe security enhancement, user as a result of, let's say, um, customer feedbacks. You also have to provide regular updates. As you're providing regular updates to your Android device, you're also making these regular updates to different operating systems where your application resides and all that. So basic hybrid is another type of mobile application, in the sense that they are it's just like how will I say, they sit in between the web app and the native app. They're a mixture of both, you know. So Instagram is a good example of that, and Wikipedia as well is a good example of that. Twitter is a good example of that as well. You have both the, as I said earlier, you have both the application. You can either have them residing on your mobile device, or you can access them through the through the web. Now, the benefits are is so another the benefits of having a hybrid application is that they are cheaper to develop than a native app. Their maintenance is simple, because you just have this app. Basically you are developing an app that can fit both, can and so what I'm to make it clear for you guys, what I'm trying to say is that you are developing an app that, uh, let's say, that has a streamlined copy. The streamlined copy can either be used as a native app or a web app. So when you are looking at the cost of development, you'll find out that you're just creating like a blanket copy of something that can work on anything. So it is cheaper to develop, it is cheaper to maintain, and as well as being cheap and easy to fit different versions and operating systems. They are also able to make advantage. They can also take advantage of the features that you have on your device, and then you can either you can get them from the app store, and then they have a browser within the app. So for instance, if you look at Instagram, when you go to Instagram, you can actually use Instagram as as an internet, because if you click on a link, it takes you directly to maybe Amazon or to YouTube or to any other external link. That's one of the they have a web browser embedded within the app as part of it. Now the downside are the graphics are less customized. So as I said earlier, because it's just like a blanket copy of an app that can work on different devices, they are less accustomed to the operating system as compared to a native app. Then another thing is that they are slower than native app, because native app are customized apps designed for specific instances. They are slower than hybrid apps are slower than native app, and so those are the benefits and downsides of the different types of mobile applications that we have. Now we have different types of mobile devices. I keep going to. All right. So we have different types of mobile devices, and when I say different types of mobile devices, I'm talking about in terms of testing. So when you are in a place of work and you are asked to test a mobile application, you can either be provided with real devices, or you can be given emulations of real devices. Now, as we said earlier, real devices, you have to, some of the considerations include different operating systems, different versions. So apart from thinking about the operating system for real devices, so you're asked, for instance, let's say they've asked you to test BBC website. Now, what are the kind of things that you'll be thinking about in terms of testing a BBC website? If you have, can people just give me suggestions of the things they would if? Okay, so this is the scenario. If you're asked to test the BBC website, what are the things that you would consider while testing the BBC website in terms of the in terms of the test scenarios? Can somebody can anyone just provide maybe one or two things they would have in mind, to test? Let's so the question is yeah, exactly, someone said the type of device to test with. Yes. And so let me make the question clearer. Okay, I'm building an app called bbc.com. Now, as a tester, what are the in terms of the mobile devices, or in terms of the way you would go about your testing, what are your considerations exactly? Phone or yes, or somebody said responsiveness and phone or web. That's fine. Now, so the reason why I'm asking that question is because uh, now, apart from somebody said phone or web, that's fine. Apart from the phone, you want to look at the operating system. So let's say, for instance, one of the requirements is that the application that I'm designing or I want to develop must work on iOS devices. Now, there's need for me to now say, okay, iOS devices, we have iPhone 7, we have iPhone 8, we have iPhone 12. iPhone 12 is coming out. We have iPhone 11. We have other variants of the iPhone mobile devices. I need to have like a cutoff point. Do I need to test iPhone developed prior to 2015? Or am I going to pick, iPhones? So these are the kind of questions that you're put. As you as a test analyst, or as a mobile test analyst, they've come to you, say, all right, so Mr. A, we are planning to develop this application. Can you give us consideration as to the types of operating systems and the types of mobile devices that we need to cater for in this development? Consideration might come from the product owner. The product owner might have had feedback from different customers or from the management or from different stakeholders as to what they want. But you as a test analyst, you might need to also give them some information as to, the types of real mobile devices that are in the market, the types of operating devices that they need to cover. That is where your job as a mobile tester actually comes into play. So you have to look at different operating systems. You have to look at the different Android operating system as well. You have to, and apart from that, it takes a great deal of manual efforts to. So, for instance, you've given them all the requirements, you've told them about the operating systems that are available. You've said to them they need to test on Android, they need to test on iOS, they need to test on these tablets, on Android tablets, on iPad. You're giving them list of. Now there's also, apart from giving them list of all these devices, you now have to start drilling down into versions. So, for instance, if I go to these websites, if you, I'll share these websites with you. Just spare me a minute. If you look at these websites called Android versions, yeah, I might share the screen with you. One second. Android versions. That would be able to give you a much clearer understanding of what I'm trying to talk about. Yeah. All right. So let me just hold. Give me a moment. Let me just quickly do something. I'm going to share something else as well. All right, so if you look at these websites that I'm looking at now, it says Android version history. So from what I've talked about, there are so many versions of Android with the different API levels. So as a tester, it's going to be very great effort for you to start thinking of, what, the latest Android version is API 30. Do I need to, the question you'll be asking yourself is it necessary for me to look at every Android version to see to see how the application will perform, or how the application will work and all that? So there's need for you to carry out detailed investigation and research, critical research of, what are the latest Android versions that we have in town. You might need to tell your product owner, what, they have almost like 30 API levels for Android versions. What is the cutoff? Where are we going to start testing from? So these are the questions that you need to, these are the questions, the research that you need to carry out, and the question that you need to ask yourself. And you need to be able to discuss this with the stakeholders and then come to an agreement. Or if it's already been specified for you, then it makes your life easier. But you still need to drill down into all these details and carry out, thorough research and all that. So going back to the slide that we were using, one second, that's fine. Now, so play from current slide. Now, so as I said earlier, there's great deal of effort to test, especially when testing on numerous devices. And another thing is that even if you've been able to pinpoint, okay, these are the operating systems and devices that I need to test my application on, are you going to be able to get them all physically? Are you going to get iPhone 7, iPhone 10, iPhone blah blah blah, and all the versions of Android that you want to test on? Are you going to be looking at them one by one and be physically testing them one by one? No. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you might have specific. There might just be specific requirement to test on some specific devices. I've seen that happen a lot. For instance, I was working on a project where their expectation was to enhance the customer experience for their services, and they had in mind, it's more like a shop, so they had in mind what applications that they were going to be providing customers to play with when they are in the shop and all that. So it was quite limited. They were only working on Samsung devices. There was no iOS. The requirement was very, very direct on the kind of devices they wanted to. So it was good for them to be able to provide the tester with the Samsung tablets, of different brands, of different applications API levels, and the job was easy for that particular tester. But for instance, if you are working for a company that develops an application that users, that they have users all around the world, then your work becomes so hard, and you'd have to probably rely on an emulator. Now, that takes us now to emulated devices. So emulated devices, a big list of different devices or operating systems. They are not, they are virtual devices. You don't have them in front of you. They are hosted on the cloud. Some of them are open source. Some of them are paid versions. Some of them gives you free trials, maybe 30 days, 14 days, 7 days, blah, blah, blah. Now, these emulated devices actually make your work easy, because at the end of the day, all you need to do is to prepare your test case, download the APK file of your mobile, of your Android. If it's an Android application, download the APK file onto the cloud for where your emulated device reside, and then based on the test cases that you provided, then you run your tests against a list of selected devices. So maybe, for instance, you might pick Android devices, or you might pick iOS devices, or you split depending on how you've split your test cases. Maybe you are running Android first, or other iOS, or whatever. Now, they are easier to use. They require less manual efforts and provide logs, reports. They capture screenshots, and they are cost effective. So it's more like a bridge between manual and automation. Some of them still require a bit of manual effort, but it's not, manual. I'll give I would have some practical experience, practical overview of this, and so that you have a feel of what I'm talking about. Now, the downside of these emulated devices, they are slower, and they rely on the speed of the device being used. So because they are hosted in the cloud, I think they are, because they are. I think I'll show you an example before we finish today's session. Because you need to go to the internet to access them, so they are dependent on the speed of the device being used. One, and on the connectivity that you have, and because some of them are located. So, for instance, some of them are dependent on different. Some of them are, so, for instance, some of them use AWS instances, which are distributed in different availability zones all over the world. Or maybe so the distance between your connection to their connection might be very, there might be issues. There might be connectivity issues, as depending on where the device is being hosted on, and all that. So you cannot simulate all human interaction, and this may lead to false reports. For instance, if part of your requirement is for you to test your application while there is a switch between, let's say, mobile Wi-Fi and mobile internet and Wi-Fi, you might not be able to simulate that interaction on an emulated device. Or let's say maybe you are crossing from O2 to Vodafone and all that. It might be very hard for you to do those kind of simulations on those devices, as compared to you physically holding a mobile device. Because in terms of testing can be anything. They might say, okay, how will the application, how will the mobile application perform if you are in the middle of transacting a business? Maybe you take off the battery, you put the battery up, you put the battery back. Will your application start from where you stop? Will application take you to where you stop from, or will it reset to you starting your transactional level again? These are the kind of things that you need to consider while writing your test cases, and based on the requirement that you've been given and all that. Now, as real life scenarios like color display in sunlight, SMS or phone interruptions can not easily be simulated or emulated using these virtual machines and all that. So now, before we continue, I don't know if I would give opportunity for us to ask questions and all that. If anyone's got a question on what we've on the few things that we've talked about, I would give like 2 or 3 minutes to, or if you have questions, just type your questions out. Then I'll come back to you to answer them. If not, then I'll just continue. Now, what are the challenges of mobile application testing here? As I've said previously, we need to understand what devices do we need to test. Yeah, so you need to give careful consideration to this, and also you need to have a combination of real and emulated devices to provide coverage before your application is released, and before you sign them off. So apart from having to use emulated devices which are hosted in the web, you also need to physically at least try your application on a real device. You don't want to do everything on you don't want to leave everything to an emulator to do for you. It is also very good for you to have maybe like just physically view them on one iPhone, one Android device, or one iOS device, or any other, maybe the Windows device or tablet and all that. Now, device version is also important. Depending on the target environment or business requirements, testers face challenges of having to test versions that are no longer updated, such as iOS 6. So, sorry. So these are the kind of constraints that a tester will also face and all that. But it's good to have these discussions with your stakeholder, letting them understand, or if to be honest, anything that would work on iOS 8 will also work on iOS 6, to be honest, because iOS 8 is a more updated version of iOS 6. So if your requirement is saying, oh, you need to look at iOS 6, but you cannot lay your hands on an iOS that is of version 6, testing it on 8 is sufficient enough to prove that it will work on an outdated version of that particular application. Yeah. Now, other things to look at as well is network connectivity. So testing applications online, offline, weak signals, without becoming more redundant, or with your app becoming redundant due to lack of connectivity. These are very, 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 very flaky and very, very hard to test as well. You cannot always simulate every kind of network connectivity that you have, but the very good ones are, at least ensuring that you test your application with a mobile connection, with a Wi-Fi connection, maybe looking at how designing test cases that will look at how your application will behave offline. So these are the various combinations of the various types of test cases that you can draft to test this kind of network connectivity and all that. So that would at least give you a bit of assurance as to how your application will behave under these circumstances. Now, different app types plays an important different app type play an important role in mobile testing, resulting in app being tested in different ways. So, for instance, you might need the way you would test an e-commerce app or a financial app might be different from the way you would test your a social, maybe like a social media app like Facebook or WhatsApp. So, you need to understand risk-based testing that comes into play. Um, you need to look at application. You need to consider things like setting your configuration and configuration and settings. For instance, screen sizes with Android. For instance, screen sizes with Android having about 24K, an app ranging from 34 to 12 inches and all that. So these are the kind of things that you need to look at. Resolution is very, very key as well. When testing your application. So to be honest, there are more they're part of accessibility testing, because you want to ensure that the application work is your application is good enough for people with different accessibility issue having accessibility issues. The application is good enough for them to be able to use. So you need to you need to give consideration to configuration settings, and and then you need to expand it to using things like maybe read and write, JAWS and all those things, accessibility testing tools that enable your application to work and, make it become accepted to a wide variety of users and all that. So mobile testing tools, many tools out there that which are so, and because of the mobile testing tool, apart from having understanding of what you want to test, how you want to go about the testing, the another challenge is, what mobile testing tool do I need to use? There are so many mobile testing tools out there these days. I can count about 50 of them. You know, but the law of depending on whether you want to do mobile application testing or you want to do automate. Sorry, you want to do manual testing of your application, or an automation. You want to carry out automation of your application. There are so many things that you can use. The most popular ones are Appium. You can use SourceLabs as well. There's Celeroid, there's Calabash, there's Browser Stack, and they all have different ways in which you can use them. Some of them are integrated with one another. For instance, you can use Appium with Browser Stack to test your application. So Browser Stack will give you will give you different device, will give you different types of operating systems and devices, while Appium will stand as a bridge between your devices and your code. So these are the kind of things that you can do, and or for instance, you can use Celeroid to just or to just test your application in isolation. Or you can use browser stack to test your application in isolation and all that. So you can use different combinations, or just decide to just pick one application and then use it and all that. So now, best practices for mobile application testing. I'll just go through this quickly. A lot of the things we've discussed earlier. Yeah, you need to have a testing strategy. The strategy will help you to lay down certain guidelines you're expected to follow, and it also gives you uniformity in testing and ensure that you have adequate test coverage. What I mean by test coverage is that you need to be sure that you are covering all yeah, yeah, you are doing everything for. So if you've been given a requirement to test an application, you need to make sure that you are detailed enough to draft test cases that will test the application, to a specific to a specific standard. So you need to ensure, if for instance you're testing a login, you need to ensure that invalid passwords are not accepted, valid passwords are accepted, different combinations of passwords is used based on the acceptance criteria. You can so you just making sure that you do a thorough job, and at the end of the day you provide the needed assurance required. Now you test on real devices. As I said earlier, you need to, even if you going to use emulators or simulators and all that, you need to also test on real devices. You need to physically see how your application will perform on these devices and all that. Now, another thing that you need to do as a tester is to always test early and test often. When there is a new when there's a change or a new deployment of code, you need to carry out regression testing. Or probably when there's a new release into a new environment, you need to carry out a smoke test. These are the things that you need to do. Or prior to your application being developed, you need to even you might even start testing early. once you have your three amigo session, once you start writing your test cases, by looking at requirement documents, even before the application is being built, you can start testing by looking at the requirement documents, going through the different requirements, understanding it. Because as a tester, because I've come to realize that even before you actually test the application on its own, there might be flaws or mistakes in the requirement documents. Some of the things that some of the acceptance criteria that might be given to you to test, they might be untestable. To be honest, they might, I've come across situations where you cannot even test there's no way you can test the acceptance criteria. So you just take it back. You say, oh, these are the flaws I've seen in your documents. Maybe you and the BA will sit down. You might even give the BA a good idea of how to logically write the acceptance criteria to test the application. That's the work of a tester. Now you need to set your device and OS preference. We've looked at this from where I showed you the different Android list of Android API levels. You need to set your device, you need to have a cutoff of where you are going to start testing from in terms of your devices, what you doing, what you would what you're going to look at, the operating system preference you're going to look at, and all that, and and also the network combination. Determine upfront which devices and operating system your app will specifically cater for, and perform detailed testing on them. So these are the so there's so many things that you have to, unlike web applications where you are looking at the functionality, and you're looking at the functionality. As long as you're able to perform all the functions of that as long as that web application is able to perform the function that it is required to perform, and then it displays properly on a PC or a laptop. Mobile application is more complex than that, because there are different operating system, different devices in which you have to ensure that these applications actually work and perform as expected. So the next thing that we're going to look at is is just the first. Normally, my first lessons are more of like they are more of like theory, and the reason why I take my time is because we need to have good foundation as to what mobile devices are, what mobile application testing is all about, and all that. So the next thing that we're going to look at is, as part of the best practices, is that automate. You need to automate your testing. Now, automation, as we rightly know, greatly reduce time to market and generate a high rate of investment, high rate of return, high rate of investment, besides giving the benefits of repeatable testing. So you need to, as an automation tester, you need to start looking at, you don't want to be running you don't want to be running your manual test cases on Excel, and then every time there's a regression testing, you pick up your that Excel sheet, you now go from test case 1 to 3 to 4. It's to be honest, it's time consuming, and you don't want to spend your time doing that. So you need to start, as a tester, you need to start looking at, okay, how best can I carry out automation. Automation, it might not be easy at first, because the time it will take you to set up your environment, time it will take you to carry out all the research, to get the best to get the best tool to use for automation. Might be cumbersome and tedious. But once you have your environment set up, once you have your framework set up, once you've written your test, and all it takes is for you to just, on the click of a button, run your regression test suite, covering hundreds of tests and all that, which you've put together over time, and your job is done. So you need to look at automation testing, which I think, which every it gives you a high return on investment, and saves you time and all that. Now, another thing that you need to look at is adequate performance. You need to carry out adequate performance testing. Performance testing in the sense, though, in the sense of how is your application performing under stress. You need to look at load as well. Stress is, subjecting the application to a specific amount of load over time, and then load as well. You need to, how will your application perform, when you have 100 users. These are the kind of things, time to load up, and time to, respond to different queries and all that. So you can, there are so many tools that you can use to check this performance of your application as well. And security testing is also important as well, especially when you are working with, to be honest, security testing is a big thing, because for instance, if it's an e-commerce website, you don't want people to just bypass your application and then, make a transaction without proper, without, maybe proper verification of cards, or proper, proper login, or you don't want people to be able to access different applications. So you need to be able to carry out, I'm sorry, you don't want people to access your application without properly logging in and all that. So you need to check for known and unknown vulnerabilities. um, and also, if including those arising from third party and open source software packages. So so that there's so many things that you need to consider with mobile application testing as well. um, Check for battery consumption, fault tolerance, and interoperability. So most times, a lot of these applications use they once your battery is being depleted, they become slow to respond. Those are the kind of things that you need to test. You need to test the application when the battery is, at the highest level, the medium level, and the lower level. Um, Check battery consumption of your application, how your application interacts with other apps on your device. So, and various, as I've said previously, various network strength, and even suspended connections and all that. um Now, another thing, so this is, to be honest, this one is more of like accessibility and user acceptance. Uh, as I said, you need to look at configuration, look and feel of your application, and ensure that the application is, because it's part of the work of a tester. If your application is not suitable to use, or if the application is, if the fonts on the application, they are too small or too big, or if they are shadowy, in the sense that, two letters are jumbled together, they are not easily legible. Those are the kind of things that you need to point out as a bug to, to the product owner, or to, or to your whoever is there, or to your BA, or to whoever, or is who the stakeholder is, as, issues that needs to be fixed and all that, cosmetic design issues, and all that. So those are the kind of things that you need to look out for while carrying out mobile app testing. Yeah, so quickly as well, categories of mobile app testing. We have functional testing, performance testing. Functional testing is just checking the functionality of our application as per the requirements. Performance testing, how is your application performing under, load, stress, server performance, network performance. Memory testing is, now, mobile devices come with limited memory as compared to computers. This type of testing is performed to test the optimized memory usage by your application. So, as I said earlier, these are the things that you need to consider. Interruption testing as well. How will the application perform with sudden loss of power to the mobile device, or maybe an interruption of a call or SMS? Those are the things you need to look out for as well. Installation testing, how long does it take to download from Google Play, or Apple Store, or whatever store you're using? And when you download it as well, during installation, does it install smoothly, or does it get frozen, or does the screen get frozen and all that? And as well as uninstalling, is when you uninstall the application, does it delete itself automatically? So your requirement to specify how your application should work, and basically you need to test all this as well. And I've said earlier, usability testing, effectiveness, efficiency, satisfaction, look and feel, and those are the things that you need to consider as well. I don't know if anyone has got a question at this particular point in time. Uh, Someone said, is Appium an emulated application? No. So Appium is not. Appium, we'll go into Appium. Basically Appium is a client server application that helps you to bridge the gap between your code and your real device. We'll go into Appium later. Another person is, what emulated device would you recommend I use for mobile device testing? Now, so so I think what you're trying to say is, what kind of maybe I think you're trying to talk about the tool that provides emulated devices that So I think we'll cover that before we finish today's. Example of them is Bitbar. Xperitest is one example as well. Browser Stack also gives you the opportunity to run to use emulated devices hosted in the cloud. So there are many of them which you can play with. What tool is used for manual testing in mobile application? So you can use your device. To be honest, if you have a requirement that says use iPhone, if your iPhone is iPhone 12, you can then use iPhone 12 to test your device. So manual testing can be both real devices or emulated devices. Real devices are the device that you hold on your hand, in your fingers, in your hand to test. You can use that to test. Emulated devices are devices that are hosted in the cloud. We'll come to that. I'll give you an example of an emulated device shortly. Any other questions? I want this session to be interactive. I don't want to be the one talking and talking and talking and talking. So if you have questions, it's good to, yeah, okay, that's fine. All right. So if there are no other questions, then we continue. No one is asking me about how they will, what are the things that they will look out for what are the things they need to consider when they are carrying out mobile testing. No one. Okay. All right. Let's continue. Now, so we'll go. We'll now go into mobile testing tools, and I'm sure a lot of you will be happy because some of the questions that you've asked, actually, they relate to this what we are going into next. Now, Appium is an open source, so we are going to be talking about mobile testing tools now, and we'll be looking at a few of them quickly. Appium is an open source cross-platform test automation framework that we use for native, hybrid, and mobile web apps. Now, so the way Appium works is that it drives iOS and Android apps using the WebDriver protocol. You still have your Selenium code written in any programming language that you want. And then Appium that will be let's say that will be your first layer. Appium will provide the second layer, and then Appium would serve as a connection between your real device or your emulated devices and your code. So your code will be the first layer. Appium will sit as an in-between, as a middle layer or a middleware between your code and your real devices. That's the way Appium works. Now, it's a black box testing tool in the sense that we don't know the source code of what is inside the Appium application here. You don't need to have a knowledge of, what the source code is for you to use it. And so the source code of the application is not needed. Neither is gathering information like UI elements or IDs or similar. Um, so you can use different tests. You can use different programming languages, framework, and tools of your choice. Together with Appium. So as I said earlier, it is based on Selenium, and it interacts with the UI applications or your mobile applications user interface. So the next one is SourceLab. SourceLab. So what I'll suggest is that you guys should, you should go and do some detailed reading of Appium and all these tools that we are talking about. SourceLab is also a cloud-based test. So provide cloud-based testing for native and hybrid apps on Android and iOS. It is based on Appium open source projects and also supports scale testing on Android and iOS simulators and emulators. So you can use SourceLab gives you the opportunity to, it provides you both simulators and emulators, both iOS and Android, and you can use it for testing on both open sources as well as commercial framework. So to the person who asked the question about what kind of tools can I use for mobile testing, manual testing, you can use SourceLab, to be honest. So if you go to their website, let me just share the screen as well. Bear with me, let me just share you my screen. So if you go to, let's Google SourceLab. Yeah, so you can, if you go to this, so all right, so you need an account to use it anyway. You can create a free account if they give you the opportunities to do that. Someone is asking, what are the things I should look out for when doing mobile testing? All right, so as I said earlier, there are so many things you need to look out for when doing mobile testing. You need to consider the devices or the operating system that you would be covering for your test design. Two, you need to look out for a combination of things that you would consider while carrying out the while designing your test cases. For instance, as I said, you have to look at the functional aspect of how your application will work. You have to look at the performance side of things as well. You have to look for, you have to be able to simulate interruptions. For instance, how would the application work, with SMS interruption, low battery interruption. You have to consider things like installation, uninstallation, so many things. So the person answering that question, I think we've covered it. You have to look at the usability as well. You have to do things like memory testing and all that. So all right, so I know that. So going back to what I was showing you, 1 second. So there's another question there. Sorry. So yeah, it's SourceLab and open source. Yeah, so basically SourceLab is open source in the sense that they might give you the opportunity to let's look at it together, to be honest. You need you see, it is open source though, but you still need to pay for it, to be honest. They only give you free trial for, I don't know, for I think 14 days free trial. But what I'll suggest is that you go into it in detail, to be honest. You go into it, you need to go into it, and so you see testing websites and mobile application test on, you can test on real and virtual devices. Easy, So I'll just suggest that you go through these. You have seamless DevOps integration as well. Yes, and then to be honest, I'm not selling them, but I think for if you want to really know about them, you need to do a lot of you need to do a bit of research into what they do. So yeah, which other question? Does Appium cover performance testing as well? Appium does not cover performance testing. Appium is used for UI testing of your application here. So if I'm correct, so let's try that together. Let's click with Appium performance. Oh, okay, Appium performance testing. So Appium is used to make functional verification of mobile applications. So yeah. So, but to be honest, you might have some bit of performance data derived from using Appium. Do you get? Maybe in time when you are using it to probably inspect your elements and all that, but it's traditionally used for functional verification of mobile apps. But you can use JMeter. I've seen JMeter use people using JMeter for performance, mobile performance testing, and there are so many other apps that you can use for that as well. Yeah, so maybe in future we'll cover that, but that's not within the remit of this session. Uh, all right, so I'll just continue with what we were doing previously. Um, all right, so we've talked about SourceLab. So CTS Cloud. Yeah, so CTS Cloud also gives you the opportunity to test on virtual devices. You can do both automation and manual testing on it as well. And you have sorry that I need to I need to keep I'm going to show you C tests. I'm going to show you C test cloud. 1 second. C test cloud. Yeah. I'm just 1 second, please, guys. C test cloud expert. No. Thank you. Hold on. All right. So well, am I sharing my screen? Sorry, I don't think I'm sorry. I think I'm modeled up. I'm not sharing my screen. 1 second. All right. So sorry about that. I thought I was sharing my screen. All right. So CTest Cloud is also, so as I said earlier, gives you the opportunity to carry out both manual and automation app testing on different virtual devices. They support UI testing and you can also configure them into um, um, seamless DevOps configuration and all that. So like you can do CI/CD, implement CI/CD with using experiment test, so that whenever your code gets deployed, it automatically tests runs your test against different devices in the cloud, and then gives you your reports and data as to how your application is performing automatically with every code deployment. It's a fully commercial tool, so I don't think Citrus Cloud is a fully commercial tool. You won't get this for free. So another one is Bitbar. This is how Bitbar looks like. This is the user interface or the console for Bitbar. Um, so many like SourceLab, X as well. They would also have they'll have UIs like this that you can manipulate things, create an automated test, start a live testing session, use artificial test bots and all that. So this is just like, this is a good example of how, some of these application cloud-based emulators look like, which you can use to carry out different forms of testing. Uh, in our next class, we'll be looking at how to use one of these, and we'll be running through them and running uh, different scenarios on them. So as I said, so there's support. So for instance, Bitbus gives you the opportunity to pick different devices paid on your subscription. If you're using the free license, you have limited um, um, devices to use. And but if you have a paid version, it gives you opportunity to run your test across multiple devices. Maybe like you can pick up to like 20 or 30 devices at once, and you run your test against them and see how your application works and all that. So that is this is basically the pictorial view of how to run a test, create an automation test, automated test on Bitbar. We'll go through this in more detail. And so this is for instance, this is a screen display of a test that has been run with iPhone 6. And that has been run with iPhone 6. You have, it gives you the device execution status, the tests success ratio, and uh, the timing, the files that you've used to carry out the tests. Maybe your APK file for the Android application that you're running your test against, or where your application is, for your application, and yeah. And then this is another diagram that gives you your test data, your test summary. Um, then you have the logs that you can go through to to look at issues, or or to just look at responses, or to look at different things. And as I said earlier, you can have screenshots as well. This is one that gives you screenshots of different stages of the test running, and you can also play a video as well. And then one of the questions that one of the things that we talked about earlier was your application performance against your CPU usage. So you can see, how your application is performing, based on how your application is consuming, using using space on your CPU, on your CPU, memory consumption. This is another thing is memory. You have it, for instance, on this diagram, you have a stable memory. So depending on whatever issue that you find, and there might be intervals where the memory usage is spiking, and then you need to raise this with the developers. They need to carry out some tweaks, and then you retest it, and then things work as normal and all that. So that's a diagram. Now, yeah, so all right, so I know you guys have done manual testing, but this is just like a recap of what a test case is. A test case is a set of condition of variables under which a tester will determine whether an application, a software, or one of its features is working as it was originally established to do so. So you need to draft good test cases, test scenarios. So the exhaustive testing is not possible due to large amount of data. So you need to ensure that you have good test scenarios that give good combination, and of and good test coverage for your software to be tested properly. Scenario testing is to make sure that end-to-end functionality of an application or test is working as expected. So you have different scenarios, for probably your end-to-end scenario. For instance, you have for valid login, for invalid login, for logging in with um, this user, logging in with that user, depending on any combination of, depending on the combination you put together, to properly test the application here. And it also checks that business flows are working as expected and ensuring coverage of the application under test. So when you gather your test scenarios together, then it gives you an end-to-end scenario. It gives you an end-to-end journey, test journey for that particular application. So and that means that you are carrying out an end-to-end testing of your application. So quickly before we draw the curtain for today's session, checklist to follow. This is just like a guidance only. Now you need to look at installation, uninstallation, launching the application, sleep or put application on standby. So that is interruption testing, shutting out, closing the application, disruptions such as SMS, call, notification, and all that. So upgrade of operating system. To be honest, this is just like guidance only. At least gives for someone who's new that is going into mobile application testing. Um, this will be this is I think this is a good guide to follow. And there are so many other things that you can add as well. So, network specific testing under various network states, changing between network states and all that. So another thing you need to look out is change of orientation, landscape or portraits orientation, display of application based on change of orientation, hardware based, battery states, memory states, CPU consumption, memory leakage, and all that. Those are the things that you need to test as well. And then when we go to more like in-depth testing, random keys, app response to random keys, testing and all that. For instance, you might want to do this because a lot of us notice that when we are logging on to some of our, most web-based application, we have this captcha that confirms whether it is a human being or 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 a robot trying to use the application. So, doing this random key testing might also help your application for you to see the responsive application to random keys. Because for instance, if you are deploying a robot or a virus to test to an application, you won't be doing that physically. You might be installing a software or be asking a software to remotely carry out a function on your behalf. So you want to see how your application test carries out or responds to jamming information or jamming random keys and all that. And mobile mode, Bluetooth, all those things, Bluetooth interruptions, airplane, change of state and all that, casting, mirror casting to your mobile. If your application is such like Netflix or maybe the one that you can cast from one device to another, you want to test how casting from one screen to the other would work. So those are the things to consider as well. Yeah, so I think it answers some of the questions that was asked based on this. Yeah, so another thing that you need to do is you need to break down your testing into two broad categories. Functional testing, testing of the UI. The UI is the graphical user interface. The workflow testing. So workflow testing is testing, from one state, from one transaction to the other. Transaction testing, and also performance. Performance in the sense that how fast is the application responding, how is the application performing under various stress, whether 20 people are using it, 300 people are using it, or just a sudden spike in in the number of users, or subjecting it to a particular load for a particular period of time. So yeah, so now basically the last thing I will just look at quickly before we round up is reporting a defect. I know that you guys would have looked at this in manual testing as well, but you have to raise descriptive and well, I will say well investigated issues before you raise them as bugs. And your bugs, and when you are raising bugs, they have to be very descriptive. You have to have good titles. Short description of what the bug should be, steps to reproduce them, environments where you found the bug, for iPhone, for a particular mobile operating system, you give the operating system, the device name. If you are working on, depending on the environment you are working on, if you are working on a test environment, if it is if it's at the development stage, maybe you are using a feature branch or a build number, or maybe depending on whatever you've been provided in terms of the environment. You need to put this there so that whoever is picking up the bug to fix, without you being there, they are able to go through these steps and verify that okay, it's actually a bug, and then fix it, and then you can then do your regression testing. Provide screenshots, provide data, maybe whatever data you've entered into the application that gives the issue, you need to provide all this as well. And logs, like I showed you earlier from Beatsbar, there were logs there, whatever the log is saying that describes the issue, you need to provide that as well. So all right, so I think it's a lot to take in, but I think it's good because for a lot of us that a lot of people that don't that this is that it's their first time coming in contact or getting to know about mobile testing. There are so many things to take in, but I think this theory is quite important, and you know and will help you with interviews, and and also serve as something that you can um, do more research on, and and all that. So if I'd like to take questions for the next couple of minutes, and then we call it a day. Someone's asking me if SourceLab. Okay, yeah, I think you can also my screen now. How does the automation testing work? Do you run the test script for mobile testing too? No. You run your test scripts just like you've done, just like you've been taught in the automation class. You write your test script as normal on your IntelliJ using Java and Cucumber, and then there's a middleware called Appium that would transfer them. Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Yeah, so there's a middleware called Appium that would then, take your code, interpret your code, and then take it to the device, and then the device will send the message back to Appium, and then Appium will then send the message back to your IntelliJ based on, on the response. So that's why it's called a client server, So you have a client on one side, you have the server on the other side, and then Appium, works based on that. And so, if SourceLab is to be paid for, how is it open source? A lot of good things are not free, to be honest. So you need to pay for things, So if SourceLab is open source in the sense that uh, I would say open source in the sense that you don't need to buy to use them. You don't need to pay for them, but there are limitations as to other benefits that you would want to gain from using that particular application. So, you might be. To be honest, I think you should read about that. So if you want to know why it's open source or why you need to why it's not open source, I believe that it doesn't give. They will give you opportunity to use it. But if you want to now go deeper into having, sorry, can we Yeah, so uh, how will I say it? If you want to experience something, some more features of the application, then it now becomes paid for. So initially they will give you as open source, but to to enjoy more benefits than you pay for. You pay for those benefits. We talked about this. Appium is mainly used for functional testing of application and all that. So, do you have any other questions? All right. So before we go, if there are no other questions, I'm going to give can we all go and look at? I'm typing it down now. Can we all go and look at Bitbar? Bitbar, yeah. Sorry, Bitbar. I wanted to type Bitbar. Can we all look at Bitbar before next week? Look at how Bitbar works. Bitbar, and then experiment test. Yeah, so you can use these two experiment test, yeah. So these are applications that you can sign up for free trials, and then it gives you the opportunity to run tests on virtual devices. They are limited though because it's free, but it will be a good opportunity for you to learn how to use them, and then bring your experiences to the class next week, and we can discuss. I will show you. I'll do. We'll have a quick play around them next week, and maybe one or two of them, and then see how they work as well. But that's the assignment for next week. Sign up for Beatsbar and Xperry test. Play around with the features on it, and then we can discuss your findings next week. Any other questions, please? In the absence of any question, then I think we can call it a day. And thank you all for coming along tonight.